All right, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to see everyone here. I am recording and we have our do now that I'm just getting ready to post. So you're going to please answer me in the chat. Last week, we defined and gave examples of ethos, pathos, and logos. Look at the definitions below. Using a direct message in chat, so you're just answering to me, determine which definition is ethos, which is pathos, and which is logos. So you're going to write like one, and if one is logos, then you're going to write that. And in your message, write all three. So one, this, two, this, and three, this. Okay, I have three answers. Okay. While you guys are doing that, I'm trying to take attendance. So just bear with me for a second. So those of you who are just coming in, you have a do now. You're going to answer in the chat. Okay. I'm almost done. I've got lots of good answers. Okay. All right. So check your answers. Number one is logos. That's where the facts and statistics. So logic. Two, your sense of right and wrong is ethos, like ethics. Okay. Sense of right and wrong. Pathos, using strong emotions to make an argument. Pathos is like, I don't want to say pathological because that's not okay, but that might be a good way to remember that. All right, so let's take a look at our results from last week. So last week, all right, so last week, I gave you an exercise on ethos, pathos, and logos where we looked at some commercials. So here are the results of that exercise. Thank you, Mom. We had the correct answer with pathos, right? Your emotions. 16 out of 18 of you got that right. Flex tape, where he was talking about like all the places that flex tape works and he proved it to you. That was logos. That's logic, right? He's actually proving that these things work. Laughing Man Coffee, the correct answer was ethos, your sense of right and wrong. And that was 7 out of 18 of you answered that. Hot dog commercial was pathos, right? It's supposed to make you laugh. It's supposed to it was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to and they used puppies, right? Like little dogs, little wiener dogs, right? And so it was supposed to make you happy or at least be funny. And Parley times Adidas, or Parley with Adidas, the correct answer was ethos, and 3 of 18 got that right. So what that tells me is that what we struggle with as a class is to determine what is ethos, determining what is ethos. Remember, the ethos is using a sense of right or wrong to convince someone to make a change. So the Laughing Man Coffee talked about like some social issues, and Parley times Adidas was talking about cleaning up the oceans, right? Here's the thing. A side effect of the sense of right and wrong might be a strong emotion, but the strong emotion is linked to that sense of right and wrong. So what you want to look for is you want to look for first, is there a sense of right or wrong? And that's how you'll be able to identify it. Is there a strong link to something that's a sense of right or wrong and making the world a better place and doing the right thing? And that's going to be how we determine whether it's ethos or whether it's pathos. All right. Any questions? I'm looking in the chat. So if you have any questions, let me know in the chat. Yes. Credibility is also ethos. All right. I'm going to assume that we can move on because we need to move on and talk about rhetorical devices. And rhetorical devices, I'm sure you've heard of before. It's the type of language that you use in order to help make an argument. Authors use and manipulate language to help the audience understand their point. And manipulate is not always a bad thing, okay? Just like in math, you have manipulatives, you move it around and you make changes to it. Words are the same thing. We can move them around and make changes to them. And by doing that, we can create a specific feeling for the audience. So carefully choosing language is part of pathos. The words we choose help the audience feel something like anger, pride, joy, rage, whatever. Okay. So it's generally part of pathos, although it can also be tied to the others. So rhetorical devices are expressive descriptions and vivid imagery that help the audience feel as though they can experience what the author experiences. Personal stories that help the audience feel connected to the author. Vocabulary and sentence structure and rhetorical devices to help to promote a particular emotion in the reader. Okay, because remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to convince, it's an argument. So we're trying to convince somebody that our viewpoint is correct. Now, a lot of these you will have seen before, but we want to talk about how they're used to create an argument. So simile is using like or as to compare two unlike things. I'm assuming that you've heard of a simile. So for example, here are some examples. Watching the conference was like a breath of fresh air. Was it actually a breath of fresh air? No, but it was like a breath of fresh air. And that's where the simile comes in. Remember, simile, if you think about simile, the L in simile goes for like, right? So we use like or as to compare two unlike things. You're like a teacher in the summertime, no class. So this was a statement on a cartoon that I watched growing up. And so it was one kid talking to another. So they were children. That child was not a teacher himself, right? So you're like a teacher in the summertime, no class. Metaphor is comparing to unlike things, but you don't use like or as. For example, to say racism is a virus. Okay. Is racism really a virus? Like an actual, like if I breathe racism on somebody, they'll sneeze? No. But it's a comparison between racism and a virus. Cancer is a journey. Okay. Do you pack your bags and go for a walk along winding road? No. But we're comparing the journey of we're comparing the act of diagnosis and treatment and getting better or whatever to a journey through your life. Okay. Any questions about simile or metaphor? I'll check the chat in just a second. Okay. Personification is to give human characteristics to something that's not human. There's a book called The Giving Tree. You may have read it, and it was written in 1964. And I believe it was Shel Silverstein, which is one of my favorite childhood poets. Anyway, the main characters in The Giving Tree are a boy and the giving apple tree. And the tree is like a human being, and it keeps giving its resources to the boy throughout his life. The tree acts almost like a parent. Next rhetorical device is hyperbole, which is a huge exaggeration used to make a particular point. If somebody says, this is the best economy ever, that's hyperbole. It's an exaggeration. He is a giant among men. Okay. So that's hyperbole, meaning he's larger than life. It's also a metaphor because he's not actually a giant. A rhetorical question is when you ask the audience a question that is not meant to be answered by the audience. It's to draw attention to a topic. Why should you care about this? That's a rhetorical question. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am not for others, what am I? If not now, when? Those are all, it's a series of rhetorical questions that comes from a speech, and I can't remember who it is, but it comes from a particular speech. Repetition is repeating the same word or group of words, and we use it for emphasis of an idea. So let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. And that comes from the I Have a Dream speech given by Martin Luther King. So the video that's on the next slide is of author Neil Gaiman. He's giving a speech after an act of terrorism. So I'm going to give you a trigger warning. He does describe what happens, but he doesn't describe it in a lot of detail, right? So there's not graphic detail, but he does tell what the violent act is. If that would be triggering for you because it was a shooting. So if that would be triggering for you, do me a favor and just turn the sound off and we can figure out something else. But let me know in a private message in the chat that you need a different example. And that's okay. That's why I gave you a trigger warning. And what I'm going to do is in the chat, I'm sending a message to everyone, which is the link. Whoops. Copy link to a capture sheet. And it looks like what you see in front of you. All right, so this is what you're going to do. I'm going to go back to the slideshow. Actually, I need to give you links to two things. Share. Okay. Okay, I'm sending the message again. You have a link for today's lesson and a link to the capture sheet. You're going to make a copy. Make a copy of the slideshow that's the capture sheet. And then at the end of the lesson, I'll show you how to share it with me. But right now, you're just making a copy of the capture sheet, and you're going to type in your capture sheet. I'm going to drop the links in one more time. Let's see. I'm going to put the link in the chat one more time. So you have links to today's lesson and the capture sheet. Go to the capture sheet for today's video. We're going to watch a video, and on the capture sheet, you're going to tell me what's his claim, like what point is he trying to get across? How does Neil Gaiman use simile, metaphor, repetition, or personification? You're going to choose one. You're not answering all four. How does he use one of those? And give the example that he uses. Okay. So remember, you're looking for simile, metaphor, repetition, or personification. Nelson, you're just coming in, and I just shared shared links in the chat. Please click on the capture sheet for the video that we're getting ready to watch. And it'll be this capture sheet that you are pulling up. All right, let's watch our video. It's a 4-minute video.
I don't know how many of you heard about what happened today in Denmark, where there was a debate on freedom of speech between a bunch of people, including some cartoonists, about what could be said and what couldn't be said, about who you can draw pictures of without getting killed and who you can't. And the debate, which was just in a cafe in Denmark, had begun, and some people drove past and fired about 200 bullets into the side of the cafe, killing 3 people. And I thought, I want to read them something I wrote. And this is the thing I wrote a few weeks ago after the Charlie Hebdo massacre. And it's a credo. It's what I believe. I believe that it is difficult to kill an idea because ideas are invisible and contagious, and they move fast. I believe that you can set your own ideas against ideas you dislike, that you should be free to argue, explain, clarify, debate, offend, insult, rage, mock, sing, dramatize, and deny. I do not believe that burning, murdering, exploding people, smashing their heads with rocks to let the bad ideas out, drowning them, or even defeating them will work to contain ideas you do not like. Ideas spring up where you do not expect them, like weeds, and are as difficult to control. I believe that repressing ideas spreads ideas. I believe that people and books and newspapers are containers for ideas, but that burning the people will be as unsuccessful as firebombing the newspaper archives. It is already too late. It is always too late. The ideas are out, hiding behind people's eyes, waiting in their thoughts. They can be whispered, they can be written on walls in the dead of night, they can be drawn. I believe that ideas do not have to be correct to exist. I believe you have every right to be perfectly certain that images of God or prophet or man are sacred and undefilable, just as I have the right to be certain of the sacredness of speech, of the sanctity of the right to mock, comment, to argue, and to utter. I believe I have the right to think and say the wrong things. I believe your remedy for that should be to argue with me or to ignore me, and that I should have the same remedy for the wrong things that you think. I believe that you have the absolute right to think things that I find offensive, stupid, preposterous, or dangerous, and that you have the right to speak, write, or distribute these things, and that I do not have the right to kill you, maim you, hurt you, or take away your liberty or property because I find your ideas threatening or insulting or downright disgusting. You probably think some of my ideas are pretty vile too. I believe that in the battle between guns and ideas, ideas will eventually win because the ideas are invisible and they linger. And sometimes they're even true. Eppur si muove. And yet, it still moves.
Okay. So in your capture sheet, this one, you are telling me what is the claim that he is giving in the speech. And remember, you're making a copy of this so that you can type in it. What is the claim that he's making? How does he use one of the things, simile, metaphor, repetition, or personification, to make his point? And you're going to give me one example. And then in just a second, I'll show you how to share. At this point, I'm going to stop the recording